We're ready to go, I think.
Ready to go, Simon. That's
Right.
great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, welcome to the St. David's Festival of Ideas. Coming to you, sadly, not from St. David's, but we're there in spirit, and we will hope to be there next year as well. The Festival of Ideas thinks big, and that's why we're discussing the future of the United Kingdom. We've got with us Alan Price, the leader of Plaid Cymru, David Melding, a Tory, distinguished Tory, long-standing member of the Senate, and very sadly standing down this spring, and Alun Davies of the Labour Party, again, a long-standing member of the Senate. Thank you all for coming. I'm Simon Jenkins. I'm writing a book at the moment, actually, on the future of the United Kingdom. So I'm rather interested in this subject, but particularly the Celtic aspects of it. And one of the things that's always interested me about the United Kingdom, properly so called, is how it never ever seems to settle down. Throughout its history, it's been in trouble. We're now approaching the centenary of the departure of Ireland from it, which effectively disbanded the United Kingdom, but the rest of Britain pretended it didn't. We're now actually right on target, approaching another crisis in it, which is concerning Scotland. And I thought we'd start off our debate this afternoon by going around our three contributors and seeing what each of them think about the present crisis in Scotland. David, I'll start with you, because I think about 10 years ago, you predicted that Great Britain wouldn't see out the 2020s. But I'm not sure whether you still hold to that prediction. What do you think is going to happen in Scotland now?
Well, I predicted that we'd have a crisis if devolution wasn't taken forward with a federal compact, because I do see the devolution we've had as being fairly volatile. Now, that's not the question you've just asked, I realise that. But I think the situation in Scotland means that the 2020s will either see Scotland become independent or the union being profoundly reformed. I don't think there's a third way. And indeed, I've argued that instead of having a terribly hostile and potentially damaging debate on whether we should have Indie Ref 2, I've said, well, why not have Union Ref 1? And then if the various parts of the United Kingdom vote against that, the new settlement along federal lines, then they could have another referendum on whether they wanted independence. And I think we need that sort of big moment. You've said that the United Kingdom has been forever in crisis. I don't quite agree with that, but it has been in flux. And I don't think we can go on like we are at the moment. We need an outcome, and that's what will happen in 2020.
Alan, can I come to you? The Labour Party, really throughout the history of the United Kingdom, has always actually been the party of the union. It's tended to hang together. It's tended not to be terribly interested in home rule. I know not always, but when push comes to shove, Labour sort of wants the thing to hang together. Do you think that's going to continue to be the case?
I think certainly the Labour Party will always want to see the union continue. Labour is deeply conservative on constitutional matters until it is forced by circumstances to be radical. And then it's not very good at being radical quite often. I think my party has to accept a great deal of responsibility for the chaotic constitutional developments we've had in Wales over the last 20 years. David's been a part of every assembly and parliament that has sat since 1999, and he's never been elected to a new parliament with the powers possessed by the parliament that had just been dissolved. You can't have a constitution. I don't fully agree with David that we need one big moment which will solve all our problems. I think constitutionals are always in development and always a part of a debate. I don't really buy the settled will argument, but I do believe that we need in a Labour Party to have a greater commitment to Aneurin Bevan's journey looking for the seat of power. Because if you're a socialist party, then power constitutional power, political power, has to be at the root of everything else. And I think that the circumstances that we all know and has been described is compelling Labour again to look at the Constitution, and Labour will look at that Constitution. It can't walk away from this debate and this discussion.
Are you a part of that debate yourself?
Yeah, certainly I want to be. All of us in the party want to be. I am an adherent of the Home Rule part of the organisation. I used that term some years ago when I was speaking from the front bench, and the then First Minister took me aside and said, "Alun, be careful." You know, nowadays, of course, the First Minister says the UK is over and that Home Rules are only options. So things are perhaps changing more quickly than any of us would ever anticipated.
Adam, do you think you're on a bit of a roll at the moment? Things are going Home Rule wards, and you can only benefit from that.
Well, yes. I mean, it's been incredible to see, isn't it, the rise in support, the surge in support for independence in Wales, which it seems to have caused even the London-based media to notice Wales now as part of the debate about the future of these islands, in a way that possibly it was on the margins of that debate for many recently. And independence itself within Wales has come in from the margins, if you like, of political debate to become, I think, the central question. And the latest opinion polls showing 39% of support for independence now means that, I mean, a few weeks ago, I was saying constantly Wales was exactly where Scotland was 10 years ago. We're now ahead of where Scotland was 10 years ago. History is accelerating, and the momentum is with the independence movement in Wales, and the direction of travel for us as a nation is pretty clear. I don't think myself we should be spending our imaginative energy thinking about how we reform or save the United Kingdom. I think we need to be doing the intellectual work, which is about preparing ourselves for what I believe is certainly probable, I think probably inevitable, which is Wales, like most nations in the world, becoming an independent nation state in the next few years ahead. Now,
that is the destination. I mean, I find many people sympathize with the concept of small state devolution in the widest sense of the word devolve, whatever it may mean. But ultimately, they want to know what the destination is. I've seen your Independence Commission report, which I think is very good. But at the end of it, I still have that kind of it's almost like the going on the yellow brick road. You're not quite sure what the real destination is. I mean, do you yourself have a clear view of that destination?
Well,
do you know what the border looks like on the A5?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, the Basques have a phrase for it, don't they? They have a phrase for many things. We build the road as we travel. Independence itself is a process, not an event, because it is a continual. It is a continual working out of the sovereignty of the Welsh people, and so the end destination will change as the people decide. In terms of relationships across these islands and indeed across to the European mainland, that will evolve as well. So, I mean, I think we talk about an EFTA like status for Wales in terms of European relationships, and the Independence Commission report does at length go into the question of the architecture of cooperation across these islands. The United Kingdom is one solution to the question of how we relate to each other as different nations across these islands, and I think that as a solution is coming to the end of its geopolitical usefulness. So we will be celebrating, in inverted commas, the centenary of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland next year. I haven't heard much of the preparations for any formal event. I don't think there'll be many other anniversaries, certainly not any big ones for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And I think how we relate to each other, there needs to be an architecture of cooperation. We share the three nations of Britain, we share an island, We have relationships, of course, with important relationships with Ireland as well. So we do need an architecture, but it shouldn't. The United Kingdom is not the architecture that's going to work for us in the 21st century, and that's why the independence question is central to Wales and Scotland, and of course the Irish unity question is so central on the island of Ireland. There isn't so much discussion in England, which is why I think that the whole notion of federalism is a dead duck, really, because you can't have a unilateral declaration of federalism. And
let me bring David in there, because the Tory party is in power. The Tory party, if you go back into history, has always been the party of the union, but it's often been the party of home rule all round. It's often had an interest in delegation. It's had an interest in small government, possibly even in small governments. But where do you think it stands on your particular interest? I know is in federalism as such, but can you just give us a sort of sketch of what that federalism would be like in United Kingdom terms?
Well, I think the easier bit, certainly Scotland and Wales, and I suppose Northern Ireland as well, that they would be recognised as having a sphere of sovereignty of their domestic affairs. I think then when Adam is sceptical about the federal compact, because then you have the issue of England. Well, my answer to that is it's up to the English people what political institutions they want. And if they want their domestic sovereignty also embedded at Westminster, then that's their decision. But, compared to 20 years ago, we're seeing the devolution spirit spread around England in a way that was really not anticipated after the debacle in the northeast of England in 2003. And I do see the great sort of regions and cities of England as possibly leading the way here. Of course, a part of England was given devolution in 1999, and that was London, which it was a bit perverse, probably the least needful part of England in terms of having more political authority and ability to stand up to the centre, but that's how it was. So I don't think the federal model is inherently problematic given our current structure and the need for much more work in England as to what the people of England want as their institutions. I mean, it's taken us nearly 20 years to really bed in a lawmaking parliament. So I think a similar time for England from now would not be unreasonable. But if we want it to work, it will work. And what you want to stop with the federal model is considerable encroachment, either the Westminster encroaching on Welsh and Scottish powers, or the reverse, which does happen. Seeing it very much with an SNP government from time to time. And that's what federalism gives you, really. You have a rule book, you have a way of negotiating challenges and difficulties. You also have a very stable way of dealing with joint powers, which is a real problem at the moment in the UK, because joint approaches tend to be dominated from the centre, and that sort of decreases their efficiency and the ability really for them to be signed up to by the devolved administrations. So let's face it, if the United Kingdom could survive as a unitary state, I don't see any great problem when England was still the dominant unit and there were no protected spaces politically for Scotland and Wales outside territorial departments of that central state. I do not see more difficulty in a federal model, somehow that England would overwhelm Scotland and Wales. Well, we would have done that in spades if that's your view of English behaviour when we were in the unitary state.
My trouble is I've yet to see a federal model broken down in all its details, which resolves all these questions. Everybody tends to say it'll work in time, or it's all a journey, but federalism is essentially about very rigid constitutions in which you have, like in America, to protect the state's rights, but adamantly so. But Alan, coming on to you, because I know you're interested in possible constitutional options. I mean, do you think that the Labour Party, because I think if the Labour Party really was very enthusiastic about Home Rule all of a sudden, it would really get somewhere. I think a lot of Conservatives are rather nervous about not being in favour of it, and I think you'd be pushing at a sort of open door if you were more strongly in favour of it.
I hope Labour will reach that position, and Keir Starmer was elected last year with a commitment to federalism, and I think that is the beginning of this conversation, and this conversation will be pursued. But I think the important thing to recognise is where this conversation started, and that is a position of 20 years of devolution coming to an end. In my view, devolution has come now to an end. I remember today a conversation I had back in, must have been 98, with a Welsh Labour MP who smiled gently at me and said, "You do remember, Alun, that power devolved is power retained." And that lovely warning was not something which troubled me for very long. It troubles me today, because for most of the 20 years of devolved government, the United Kingdom government of many different colours has been a participant, and a positive participant. I sat in Brussels in the delegation room, waiting for an Agriculture Council meeting to take place, with 4 governments sat around a table, reaching agreement on a joint United Kingdom position, and it worked. Many people will tell you that federalism can't work when you've got one major player and 3 minor players. But we sat around that table and we made it work. And we made it work month after month after month. And do you know, Simon, you never heard about that, because there was no trouble, very little disputes. And what disputes they were resolved between ministers and officials sitting together in those airless rooms. But now we have a government, a United Kingdom government, that is determined to break the system. And for too long in those days I've just described, the probable reality is that we didn't have the structures to manage the state. What we had was a demand for goodwill to manage that state. And that goodwill existed. It existed between DUP, Sinn Féin, SNP ministers, as well as Labour and Conservative and Lib Dem. And you would be able to manage that as long as there's a goodwill to do so. Today, what I see, and what Mark Drakeford described in front of a Welsh Affairs Select Committee last week, is a United Kingdom government that is determined to break the mandate of the Welsh and Scottish governments, and to break the settlement. And as a consequence of that, the power devolved that I was warned about over 2 decades ago means that I do not believe that devolution today in its current form is sustainable.
Well, in that case, Adam, what is the way forward? I kind of get a sense now, it's rather like the 1880s, when everyone sort of agreed on a sort of federal solution to the problem of the sort of the Celtic fringe. It ended in disaster. War in Ireland, the disruption, disintegration of the United Kingdom. The ambition that you have for Wales does require what might be called a rocket behind it. That rocket you haven't yet got. You plead that Scotland is the way forward. Scotland hasn't got there yet. It's getting itself in a terrible tangle now. What do you see in Wales? I think it's going to be more challenging than Scotland to be that rocket.
I think what you see in is Wales. I don't accept the inevitabilism that Adam described. And, you know, when I think about my constituency here in Blaenau Gwent, I don't see, you know, the people on the streets demanding independence. What I see is people on the streets demanding investment and jobs and public services and the rest of it, which you would find remarkably similar, I suspect, in Kilmarnock and in Nottinghamshire as well. So I don't think you see that demand for constitutionalism. But
well, let me I put the question to Adam. But Adam, what's your answer to that?
The key thing is, though,
Adam, not Alan. Sorry, we've got a problem.
Too many A's. Yeah.
Adam. Okay.
Alan used to be a member of Plaid Cymru, so it's an easy mistake to make. Look, I think the reason why we are seeing that rocket-like rise in support for independence is because the very question that Alan raised. I mean, the economic question, the social question. how do we deliver social and economic justice to Wales, that has been absolutely core to the surge in support for independence. And so it's not an abstract question. If it ever was, it certainly isn't anymore. It's not independence for independence sake. It's independence for a purpose. And you saw the same in Scotland, where the independence campaign was energized really by people converting to independence because they saw it as a means of delivering the radical vision of a better and more socially and economically just Scotland. And the same is happening in Wales. And I think that we are at a bit of a crossroads, and I would characterize it, and that's happened so many times in our own history, don't we? I mean, our best historians, Gwyneth Williams, talked about Wales reinventing itself. We are a nation of radical discontinuities, and we are at such a disjuncture, I think, in our history. And at disjunctures, things change very, very quickly, and that's what's happening now. And I think I would characterize the crossroads as this: it's either a choice between a nostalgia for a Britain that no longer exists. And there are progressive versions of that. And I would probably say that Alun and David represent progressive versions of that nostalgia. And there are more reactionary versions of it. And indeed, Boris Johnson's government probably is the encapsulation of that. It's the choice between that nostalgia and the vision of a future Wales that we must now create. And I think people are attracted to that future vision. The problem with, I think, Labour's response to what's happening in terms of the independence movement in Wales, the mention of home rule. I mean, that just proves my point, doesn't it? I mean, it's an idea from the 1880s. You were referring to the 1880s. That is absolutely an idea from the 1880s. It didn't work then. It's fraught with difficulty. And the number one problem is the problem at the heart of the Federalist project is quite simple. It's the arithmetic. It's the demography of these islands. When you have one country, which is one of the constituent nations, which is about 85% of the population, then how are you ever going to solve the democratic deficit, which is the core reason for the independence movement in Wales and Scotland? Wales has never, ever, in the democratic era, voted for a Conservative government, yet we've had Conservative governments for 2/3 of the time, and no one convincingly can say that that's going to be any different in the future, even if Labour wins the next election. If you don't solve that problem, then we'll be back here again, because however you change the Constitution of the United Kingdom, whatever you leave at the centre, then those are going to be pretty important levers that we will not control in a fundamental sense, in the sense of the Welsh nation or Welsh demos, which has fundamental different political values, different social structure, different interests, etc. And those are never going to be reflected at the centre. And that's why, there is an unbreakable democratic logic in the case for independence.
David, what do you say to that?
Well, I think there are a lot of assumptions there. I have to say, I think if you did see Scottish and Welsh independence, you'd have a very different political dynamic, which would generate strong centre-right parties. Incidentally, I've always thought it foolish for my colleagues in England, who are not particularly unionist, and I'm afraid there is a large part of the Conservative Party now that is indifferent, if I'll put it no more strongly, to the union than that. And these people, just assume that England would always be dominated by the Conservative Party. It wouldn't. An independent England would definitely generate a new political dynamic. So now it is of course true that Wales, more often than not, has had at the state level a government it didn't vote for. Scotland since the 50s also. But there are compensations in being in a big state, and I suppose you have to weigh them up, because there are all sorts of challenges about saying our ideal situation is that all states should be nations, that the nation and the state should be coterminous. Now, Adam said earlier that that is a natural situation in the world. Well, it isn't at all. I mean, at the lower end of the estimate, there are 600 or 700 nations in the world. That's a very tight definition of nation. If you're a bit looser, you can be up to 6,000 or 7,000 nations in the world. So if a multi-nation state like Britain collapses, I do think it would be seen as part of a wider historical process. It would have a big impact in the English-speaking world and beyond. And now, you can argue it would be better to have a world order of many, many, many small states. But I think we ought to know that that's the trajectory if that kind of happens. And I do not think there's anything undemocratic about saying nations don't necessarily have to be states. Big philosophical question. It's one the people of Britain should face, and I accept that. But I do not think that, you know, on one side, the argument you have democracy, the other, you have, well, whatever, a form of imposed rule for the smaller units. I do not think that's a fair way of describing the United Kingdom to date. For whatever its conflicts and inadequacies and difficulties, it cannot be portrayed in that way fairly.
But presumably, I mean, the essence of things changed, I think, in 20th century, 21st century, is the question of agency. Who gets to decide? And the reason why you have these smaller states now, and Adam studied them, I know, is they wanted to be small states. If people don't want to be a part of a big nation, I ask the question, whose right is it to stop them? And it seems to me that we're getting close to the point now where what happened in Ireland, which was very emphatic, may now happen in Scotland. If it happens in Scotland, it may happen in Wales. And at the end of it, the English have got to just bloody well get used to it. It's no good saying, oh, it'd be better off if you were all together. If they don't want to be all together, nothing on earth is going to make them. Alan, what do you think of that?
I agree with you. And the English and the British government can't force and compel the Scots to stay in a union. They don't wish to do so either. If the SNP win an election in May, then they've won a mandate, an overwhelming mandate for a referendum. And they've got the right to exercise that mandate, in my view. It would be foolhardy to seek to prevent that happening. And I think whatever the future is, it's got to be, in the sense of agency, is an important question. It's got to be a matter for us to take those decisions. And, you know, I think Adam would be deeply disappointed if he felt that my constituency was joining his Twitter army for independence. It isn't. You know, the people who voted, over 60% of which voted to leave the European Union, weren't wishing to leave the European Union to be part of a Welsh state. They wanted to be part of a British state defined by British nationalism. Now, they don't like the Conservatives, quite frankly. They don't like Boris Johnson, and they don't like a Conservative government. But that dislike and that frustration does not mean that they want to break the structures of the state. And I suspect that, you know, the political centre of gravity in Wales is moving. I think it's moving towards where myself and David have found ourselves from very different directions. I think it's probably fair to say, in a place which I define as home rule, because of the sense of history that has. I will remind Adam that independence is not a 21st century invention either. And that I suspect that self-government within the United Kingdom, which was, you know, the cry of the Scottish Labour Party back in 1999, is where people in Wales want to be. But if the United Kingdom doesn't exist, then that question is open again. I
mean, can I ask you, is that essentially why you left Plaid Cymru and joined Labour, that you felt there has to be a middle way rather than an absolute?
Well, ironically, Plaid Cymru wasn't very keen on independence, but I was a member of it. I remember the debates and the discussions we had then. And there were very strong views that we should have self-government and not independence in those days. But, you know, things change. And
you were an advocate of independence.
Well, I wasn't actually. I was an advocate of working together, which is what I did in 97, 99 when I left Plaid Cymru. But, you know, for me, Wales has always needed to have the structures that enables it to take decisions as a country and not to have those decisions forced upon it. And my feeling is that the sort of home rule that I'm seeking to advocate at the moment is where Wales wants to be.
Adam, I sort of feel that you've reached a certain point in the argument in Plaid Cymru, that you've stated your case. Your case is, so to speak, the only alternative to the present UK is the Irish solution, in other words, independence. The worry is, in order to take this forward, in a sense, Wales has collectively got to take the initiative. The whole of Wales has got to, in some sense, feel strongly one way, in fact, your way. And what I don't see is you're genuinely breaking through into that argument. You've got tremendous sympathy, which I think has a lot to do with COVID. I think I was fascinated to see a woman on television being asked what she felt about Mark Drakeford. She said, "I don't care. If someone's going to tell me how to lead my life, I want it to be a Welsh voice, not an English voice," which seemed to be the ultimate test of self-government. But nonetheless, I'm still intrigued as how you sort of go to the next step.
Well, I think that you're right that the last 12 months has seen a step change, and in many ways it's been the most important period, I think, since the beginning of devolution. So if people were in any doubt before, or without the media landscape that Scotland has, it's been quite difficult at times to raise people's awareness that even of the facts of devolution. I think that's all gone away. I mean, the people know that they have a Welsh Health Minister and an Education Minister, and that they are glad that they've had a Welsh government, because it's acted as a bulwark against the shambles and the recklessness and the chamocracy that we've seen from the Westminster government. So I think that and people often ask me, "Oh, that must be terrible for you. You're challenging as an opposition party, and yet you've got high approval ratings for the Welsh government." And I think this is fantastic in terms of our political project. I mean, Plaid Cymru doesn't exist as a political party just to seek power for its own purpose. We are there because we want to see Wales as an independent country. And the fact that we have, I think, that such strong levels of support for the fact that we've had a Welsh government which has been much better at dealing with the pandemic, the Westminster government, that is great news in terms of the Welsh national movement. Where do we go from here? I think that what we're seeing is a continuum of support, and we're seeing people shifting along that continuum. So we've got people moving from indie curious to indie confident during the course of the pandemic. The furlough moment in the firebrick is absolutely critical here. So I almost don't have to say the words. People say it to me when I talk to them. The refusal of the Treasury to extend the furlough when the Welsh government asked for it in order to have a longer firebrick, and yet it was extended a few weeks later when the situation in England changed. That I think history books will tell is one of the seminal moments of Welsh modern history, because the penny has dropped, in the Welsh collective psyche, that Westminster is never going to look after us. And I think that people now are on that journey. And now how fast are we going along that journey? Simon, I think it's inevitable that events, as Alun was saying, events elsewhere in these islands are obviously going to be a major factor. So who knows what happens when the Scottish National Party and the Greens, when there's a majority for a second independence referendum, and do Westminster continue to frustrate those ambitions? It's not sustainable in the long term. So Scotland is going to resolve that. I think even Alun, reading between the lines, would say that if Scotland goes independence, then Wales has to become an independent nation. And my argument, even for people that are not convinced yet of the full case for independence, is, can we at least accept that we need to get prepared? because we could very well be in a situation where, to quote Alun again, the United Kingdom will no longer exist in a matter of a few years. And we need to start, at the very least, doing the contingency planning. We need to be putting the foundations in place for us to become an independent nation. And in the course of doing that, Simon, then, you know, some of the detailed questions that we started to address in our Independence Commission report, the legitimate questions that people have, I think we need to get into a position where we have those answers anyway, not just so that people can make an informed decision when we have an independence referendum, but because I think independence may be the very, very near destiny that we're looking at because of events elsewhere in these islands. And that's why I do say we should be focusing our energies on that question, you know, what is an independent Wales going to look like, rather than focusing our energies, as we are mostly in this conversation, asking about how we reform the United Kingdom. I think the United Kingdom is unreformable. Yes, some people disagree with that, but I think we need to be focusing our energies on the question of what does Wales need to do to get from where we are now to get ready for independence, because I think it is coming, and it may come sooner than many, many people think.
David, now you said when you retire from the Senate this spring, you're going to become a mischievous commentator. Could your mischief extend to effectively taking Adam at his word, saying, all right, we need a plan. Adam's plan is for independence. Your plan is for some sort of federalism. I'm still unclear quite what that means. But do you think that in a sense you go down the same road, possibly Alun as well, the same road together towards a first sort of step towards an independent state, but not an independent state? And from that, you then have the problem of convincing your party colleagues, so to speak, in England, who at the moment at least are implacably opposed to it.
Well, as I said, I do think in the 2020s there will be a big constitutional moment when the peoples of the United Kingdom have to make a decision whether they want to invest in a new union, and it would be, you know, let's say it would use federal mechanisms. I think your problem, Simon, is that you want a very tight 19th century type of federalism, and I don't necessarily see that as likely or desirable. But I do think that moment is approaching. I think there's a huge problem with unionists trying just to say in Scotland we will deny a second referendum. I think it will depend on the sort of mandate that a Scottish government gets, and that's in some doubt at the moment. But even if it's not given at this election, I think unionists would be wise to see that as a pause when they should bring forward the new vision for a union. And they should, if they don't do that, expect a further request fairly soon, probably from a Scottish government for a referendum. So this is definitely there. I do agree with Adam that if Scotland becomes independent, then we have to think very seriously in Wales about our constitutional future. I do think it's possible to have a stable union between England and Wales, but it would be quite challenging, and it would not be particularly easy to preserve domestic Welsh autonomy within that combination. You'd have to have very definite constitutional structures in place. But if I can just say something radical just to conclude this answer, I don't see the challenge being in Scotland or Wales particularly about the future of the union, because I think given the right formula, both Scotland and Wales will stay in. The problem is England, and do unionists in England want to pay the price for the United Kingdom to continue? And that question is difficult to answer at the moment. And I pose that to my colleagues in England, because I do think it's the question they have to face.
Alun, what do you say to that?
I suspect that if the United Kingdom does not exist in its current form, then reforming or creating a new United Kingdom will be a uniquely difficult task. It's difficult to envisage how that would operate. But like David, I do not believe the task of creating a state which encompasses parliaments in London, Cardiff, Edinburgh, and Belfast is insurmountable. I think we do need to start with a clean sheet of paper, if you like. We need a new Statute of Westminster, where the United Kingdom Imperial Parliament, as it exists today, the palace by the Thames, decides that it will provide for sovereignty to rest amongst our parliaments and not with the crown in parliament, amongst the peoples of the United Kingdom. And then we're able to fashion a way of working, which I've seen happen, frankly. I've seen happen within the current structure. I believe it can work. I don't believe it's some sort of throwback from a past era. I believe that a United Kingdom speaking with one voice but different accents is entirely possible. And I think we have a shared history and we can have a shared future. What we cannot have is a shared dictatorship. And unfortunately, today, as we speak, I believe that is where we are. The Internal Markets Act was an act of constitutional vandalism. It was an appalling piece of legislation. The way that the United Kingdom government has driven Brexit through parliaments in particularly Cardiff and Edinburgh, should we say, has been unacceptable. And whatever structures we have in the future, they have to be strong enough to withstand a government elected on a platform to drive a coach and horses through our constitutional arrangements. We can't carry on the way we are.
I'll take questions from viewers in a minute. But it's just on that last point, dictatorship. If we go back to the 19th century, the Irish had no problem with this. They fought. There's a terrible mildness in Wales, I always feel. Even in Scotland too, the desire to do things by the book, the desire to sort of awake the movement of public opinion is one of the sort of almost instinctive restraints on Scots and Welsh political opposition. You've been ruled by not your party for so long. I'm puzzled that in a sense, you're all sounding so mild.
I'm very cross, Simon, if it helps at all. You know, David actually made a first-class speech opposing his own party when it came to the internal markets bill, as it was at the time, and the legislative consent for that. And I think, you know, don't dismiss my easy demeanor this afternoon for anything except an enormous frustration of the way things are. But I simply feel that we have no alternative but to work through the ballot box, quite frankly. I want a mandate in May, not simply to serve my own constituency again, which I wish to have, but also to protect my country. And I want to protect my country from a UK government that cannot win a mandate in Wales and wants to undermine our democracy as a consequence of its political failures. And so don't please misunderstand any of that. I think we're at a point where we have to confront these issues. And I hope we will be able to confront them and resolve them.
Let me bring in. Yeah, can I just say? I mean, I agree with you, Simon. When I hear, you know, when I hear discussions of constitutional reform, you know, it doesn't kind of, it doesn't invigorate you with a sort of sense of radical energy. And sometimes I feel as if I'm listening to Gladstone, you know, speaking, you know, from beyond the grave. When I contrast that with the energy in the independence movement in Wales, you know, there is a people power, you know, powered movement that you know, it has the largest political movement in Wales by membership. Yes, Cymru, full of positive energy, and you know, there is your answer. Something is happening. Something is in the air. Welsh politics is moving, and it's accelerating very, very fast. And so I think the analogy that I would look at, think about what happened at the end of liberal Wales, you know, just before the First World War. there had been a political ascendancy there. Nothing much had changed in generations, and suddenly everything changed. And the shift in a matter of a small number of years over from the Liberal Party to the Labour Party, a young generation that took Wales politically to a very, very different place. That's the sense, I think, of what is happening in Welsh politics at the moment. Welsh politics is in flow, whereas it's been in stasis for many, many years. Now, whether that's reflected in the result in 8 weeks' time in an election, I hope so, and Alun hopes not, no doubt. And probably David's agnostic on this question, but certainly, the substratum of politics in Wales, something is brewing. The question is when is the earthquake going to happen? Because it's coming. You can feel the tremors now.
I think David's your answer. He's going to become mischievous. That's the earthquake.
Simon, I must, however, take issue with the way you describe Ireland. I think the reason Ireland is such a stark warning, I think, to unionists, is that they had so long to present fairly mild proposals, and the actual conflict that really threatened the UK state was the one from Northern Ireland and the civil war that was threatened, in which many in the establishment in England were prepared to join in. In terms of the south of Ireland, there were sporadic instances of terrorism. They weren't, they were few and far between. But the only sustained rebellion came in 1916 by a small minority of the population, and that was very badly handled, and then that did lead to a watershed. But I don't think it's fair to frame the Irish situation quite as you have done. They did not want independence from the 1860s. They wanted home rule, and they wanted home rule as late as 1914.
And they thought they were going to get it probably, but anyway, that was a particular sort of disaster, I think. We've had a number of questions have come in. A lot of them aren't questions; they're really statements in agreement with what most of you have been saying. But one interesting point is raised that Wales is a diffuse country of many different points of view, and the difficulty is going to be to try and get Wales as a country to come together and present exactly what it does want. Not just to itself, but to the collective of the United Kingdom. And I see that as a real problem. Is trying to define Wales almost. There's a famous question put to Lloyd George during the Cymru Fydd campaign from some people in Swansea, I think. And they said, "How dare you come and tell us English down here what to do?" And that was a particular time in Glamorgan's history, and it was very English. But there does remain this split in Wales. How do you overcome the split in Wales, Adam?
Yes, there are interesting parallels with the Italian unification movement, isn't it? We made Italy, now we must make Italians. I think the question of the unity of Wales is absolutely central to the success of the independence movement, and because for a relatively small country, we have been quite vociferous over many times in the past, haven't we, between Welsh speaker, non-Welsh speaker, between rural Wales, urban Wales, and as you said, geography as well. So I think that is at the heart of the task that lies before the independence movement, is how we create unity out of the diversity of Wales. And I think the new independence movement in Wales, if I can call it that, is actually doing a pretty good job at that, because it is a much more inclusive, diverse place than the traditional caricature of Welsh nationalism. And there's a space here for everyone. There are 3.3 million versions of what it is to be Welsh, and everyone is welcome and everyone is necessary. So I think that's part of the answer, and saying, as Sean Jobbins, the chair of Yes Cymru, said, there's not a measuring tape where you measure Welshness and say, oh, you're 9.7. Everyone is invited to this new Wales, no matter where you're from. The only question that we should be focused on is where we are going as a nation. And so in a sense, the independence movement in its new guise is helping to unite the nation in a new way. And it's really interesting as well, I think, and it was happened in Scotland with the independence referendum. Here is a movement that is outward looking and forward looking. It is, it is, in terms of its entire culture, it is focused on the creation of the future Wales. What does that mean? Actively imagining, what does that look like, and involving people in sort of deliberative democracy as part of that, and also very much internationalist in its outlook. So it completely reverses those traditional stereotypes of what independence or Welsh nationalism was about, and I think that is really core to understanding its recent success and the surge of support. Everyone's invited to this party, and what a party it will be when Wales becomes independent.
I think we'll probably agree on that.
David, what do you think?
Well, I suppose the philosophical answer is that should Scotland and Wales become states, they will then have the challenges of states, just like Britain currently has to deal with embedded minorities that don't have profound loyalty to the state, like Scottish and Welsh nationalists. Then in Wales, they would, about 25% of the population has been born outside Wales, most of them in England, and a fair proportion, perhaps half of those, would probably still have a loyalty to Britain and would not be terribly comfortable in a Welsh state. But, I think modern democracies and stable constitutions at least are able to deal with that. I mean, it would take great sensitivity in the way you recognize minority rights, I think. But, we have to do that on a Britain or UK-wide level now. But it would be a challenge, and it would be something that any future independent states, if they were to merge in Scotland and Wales, would have to face. And I'm not always sure that nationalists take those sort of questions very seriously, just like they don't take the signal statehood for Wales and Scotland would send to the wider world, where secession is regarded as against international law broadly. Now, we don't have that view in the United Kingdom, but it is the common view in the world order. So, there are lots of issues here that need consideration, even if you come up with a view that's very firmly still in favor of secession. But secession is not an easy process in international order. And you asked earlier, Simon, what is a people? And can the people today tie the people in the future in an ordinary process, in a referendum where majority of one is enough? I mean, these are very, very tricky questions. And I suppose if you really wanted to look for some lessons, you perhaps look at Canada and the Quebec question, because at least you have had a Supreme Court ruling there on the permissibility of secession. And it was a very interesting judgment. I think it basically said that the people of Quebec didn't have the right to secede, but if they were firmly of the view that that was best for them, then they had the right to negotiate it with the Canadian government. So it was a very nuanced judgment. But I think it does remind us of the difficulties that we face in the independence question. It's not a simple process at all.
Can I just say something about Britishness, because I think this is really important, and you touched there, David, on British identity within Wales, and I think, there are many communities where the British Welsh identity is very, very strong indeed, and I think some of the coalfield communities that we both represent, Alun, I think that would be the case. And I think it's important to recognise that identity will continue in an independent Wales. And, there are similar kind of discussions going on in relation to the Irish unity question, and proponents of United Ireland saying, look, the Ulster and British identity will continue and should be respected and accommodated and celebrated even within a United Ireland. And I think that the same is absolutely the case in the case of Wales, and identity is subjective. Your identity is your identity, and I think it's important to recognise that. And this is not a kind of expunging of that identity. It is about the change to different political structures in terms of Wales itself, but also I think it's important to say we need to create new structures then of cooperation, which will be give practical form as well to that ongoing desire for there to be some kind of British umbrella. But it doesn't have to be an unitary state. That's the point. And I've referred to Benelux. I mean, there are different models out there. You know, Benelux, the Nordic Union is probably a looser form of cooperation. So the first thing that we have to do, well, one of the first things we have to do after independent Wales is recreate Britain, is remake Britain. We're not, independence isn't about breaking Britain. It's about ending this political structure. The United Kingdom doesn't work. And then we have to remake Britain in a different form. And I think that is a qualitatively different proposition. And that means that if you have a British identity, yes, there will be political structures and constitutional structures which give form to that. It's just that this model of the United Kingdom now is no longer politically sustainable. That's, I think, the difference between us.
But I mean, I asked the question for a reason, which is that it was one of the viewers asked about Welsh unity. I mean, I vividly remember in Gwynedd asking someone when Cardiff was playing the cup final, would they support Cardiff or Liverpool? And they said Liverpool, and I was quite shocked. But it's a fact of Welsh life, I know. But coming back to the point raised both by Adam and David, the question is, what is left after federalism or independence light or whatever you want to call it? One of the questions asked by one of the viewers is what do you do about the issues that, so to speak, transcend both subnational and national boundaries, like global warming, civil rights, free trade, these things, where you do need a super state of some sort. And I'm still not quite clear. I mean, I'm clear in Adam's case, because Adam, although he's just said he'd like something, David wants something more substantive, something to reflect people's sense of Britishness. It gets very confusing very quickly if you're not very specific about what it is you want. It was the devil in the 1880s and 90s here, that people wanted home rule all round as a way of stopping the decay of the United Kingdom. You need to know very clearly, and I still don't think we've got there, what are the institutions you are going to leave in place to be a sort of united sort of kingdom. Alan, what do you think?
Can I say, first of all, on issue identity, I was glad to hear Adam speaking in the way that he was, because I think it is important that we don't sort of try to create these divisions within our communities. You know, Lord knows there's been far too much division created on the basis of a fake nationalism through the Brexit process over the last few years. And I've seen what that's done to my own community, and I don't want to see that happen again. But in terms of recreating Britain, you know, I'll use Adam's terms, I think there's a lot we can do by recognizing the commonality of the threats, if you like, or the challenges we face. I don't think that any of us, whether it's myself and David in terms of home rule or Adam in terms of independence, want to create conflict in the way that Brexiteers constantly want to create conflict with the European Union. You know, we've seen over the last few months, and we've seen what's happening with Northern Ireland and the Protocol now, where there's conflict being created time and time again. And what I would see is collaboration and cooperation. And, you know, we're celebrating the birthday of Robert Owen a few weeks ago here. And I think cooperation is how I would see us working together. And, you know, you ask about structures. The Australian Commonwealth Grants Commission, I think, is a very good structure in terms of handling treasury issues. You know, I don't think you have to be a member of the governments in Scotland or Wales to feel bruised by the attitude of the Treasury. We do need to change completely the way in which we manage finances, the structure of finances of the United Kingdom. And that needs to happen whether you go down the route of federalism or not. Frankly, what we do today doesn't work. So you do need to create the financial structures of a federal state. And if that parts of our federal state wish to become independent, then they can do so. But you also then need to create the structures, a council of ministers, for example, to take decisions. You do need to have some sort of interinstitutional democratic accountability. The House of Lords Constitution Committee has done some fantastic work on this. David led some very important work on this in our own Constitutional Committee in Cardiff some years ago. But we have already done parts of this, and we tend to do it in secret. You know, when William Hague was the Foreign Secretary some years ago, he worked hard to ensure that whenever the British or the UK voice was heard in Brussels, that it contained Scottish, Welsh, and Northern Irish policies and needs and wishes and wants as well. Now, I don't find that difficult. It might not have the romance that Adam is searching for, but it does have a dreadful sense of achievability and a sense that it does work. So, you know, the structures of the finance, I would say, must come first. And I would say structures where ministers with independent mandates in our different parts of the United Kingdom can meet together as a quadrilateral or trilateral, see how it goes, and then take decisions which are for the benefit of all of us. There's a terrible sense of practicality there, Simon, which we can achieve if there is, first of all, the structure and an acceptance from Westminster that they are no longer an imperial parliament, and they must accept our mandates in Cardiff and Edinburgh and our rights to govern. And when we have that together with a settlement in Wales, which includes the judiciary and the justice system and the rest of it, then we will start towards the road towards stability. The last 20 years have been a constitutional disaster for Wales. You know, the railway 2 miles in one direction is devolved. The railway 2 miles in the other direction isn't devolved. Now, you tell me how that structure is supposed to work.
Well, I think my question is, you tell us. Someone's asked here a rather interesting question. He said, just suppose all this nice talk, which entirely depends in some sense on the regime in Westminster agreeing to go along with this talk, which at the moment is showing absolutely no sign whatsoever of being prepared to do. Boris Johnson could not be less interested in what we're discussing. What happens if, for the sake of the argument, as someone called Mike asks, the Scottish devolution just doesn't happen? I mean, Scottish independence just doesn't happen. They fall apart as they appear to being at the moment. They lose all their velocity. It goes down the route that so many home rule or higher independence movements have gone in the past. I mean, Adam, I mean, if Scottish independence fails, does Welsh independence fail by the same token?
No. I think it has its own momentum now. As I was saying, we're actually ahead of where they were 10 years ago, and you know, the context is always going to be different in every nation. I mean, in essence, what we're seeing, interestingly, with the Welsh independence question is a reversal of the familiar logic of the question that is always asked, which is Wales too poor to be independent? People are now coming to the realization that we are poor because we're not independent, and it will ever be thus. You know, unless we have our hands on those levers and tools that an independent sovereign nation has, then we're never going to prize ourselves out of this rut of poverty. And that has incredible political consequences, because if the force of that argument carries, then many of those communities that Alun referred to and he represents, which are clearly scarred by the endemic poverty, which has been the legacy of you know, this unequal United Kingdom with its, you know, concentration of political and economic power in the southeast of this state, are going to be attracted increasingly to the power of the independence argument, because independence is a political project which provides a clear solution to the problems that have bedeviled us for generations. You know, the 1/3 of our children living in poverty. So I think that there is the wind is in our sails in that. I think we have the better argument, to be honest with you. This is the question to the federalists. If you, and under any model of federalism, you still have a residue of reserve power at the center, which is pretty important, which are the key economic questions. So we are essentially within this economic and monetary union that is the United Kingdom. You know, we are Greece. And the southeast of England is Germany, effectively. If we were an independent country, then we would have the tools to address the deep-seated economic problems that we had. Within this unequal economic and monetary union, we are completely vulnerable and clearly, repeatedly, as we've seen over generations, it has never got better. There has never been any sustainable solution. And I don't see that federalism, where it will keep those important economic levers will remain at the center. I don't think that fundamentally changes anything. So I think the argument, the momentum is with us because people are tired. People are tired, and we are offering them now the most powerful currency that has ever existed in politics, which is hope.
Well, that's one sort of currency. It's not a currency I can take into the shop and use. And I mean, I think a lot of the debate about Welsh independence, as I find in Scotland also, is obsessed with abstract nouns. And when you come down to things like the currency, the border, the trade, the judiciary, these are matters that at some stage in this evolving journey, people start saying, "Hold on a minute, what's happening here?"
I saw well, there was an interesting intervention, wasn't there, by Mark Drakeford saying, "Okay, answer me this one question, which is what currency would you use?" Well, fine, let's have that argument. I mean, there is, because he said, you know, you either have your own currency, which has the benefits of you being able to to be able to devalue your currency and run your own interest rates, but then you lose on the transaction costs, because there's a simple answer to that, and Mark Drakeford should know, because one of his economic advisors, Jerry Holtham, has written a paper on something called national units of account. National units of account, it's a very well-known concept amongst economists, which allows you, certainly in a transitional phase, to have the benefits of both worlds. So you index national units of accounts to sterling, so you'd still use sterling in that immediate period, but you would still have many of the benefits of running your own currency. It has been suggested within the context of the euro area as well. So that's a slightly technical answer. This is the kind of thing that we need some detailed work, which is why we need a pro-independence government to do that detailed work. But there are clear answers which would deliver immediate benefits, and whether you then transition, Simon, to a full currency, which would have further advantages, that is a question for the future. But certainly in that transitional period, there is already a well understood answer to that question, that all independent countries, if they had any sense, would adopt a national unit of account. And let's do this detailed work, because we're going to be there. We're going to be facing this in very short order. But we should have no fear, because there are great advantages for us in terms of being able to solve our economic problems. And you only have to look at the success stories of small independent countries in Europe, not just in the economic sphere, in the ecological sphere as well. Look at Finland, because your question earlier asked about climate change. Wales would be able to get to net zero far quicker as an independent country than we will be within the United Kingdom, because we'll have the power to be able to do so. Even the Committee on Climate Change says, well, many of the powers remain at Westminster, and so unfortunately you can't do what Finland is doing, which is to try and get them much quicker. That will change with independence. So wherever you look at it, Simon, I think, the levers and tools that independence gives us to solve our problems, I think are far outweigh any of the advantages that I can see from remaining part of this United Kingdom.
Okay, David, it's clear. Some of the questions are clear, but some of the answers may not be quite so clear. But is your view really this is completely impracticable as a proposal? I mean, it's happened to Slovenia and Slovakia and Montenegro, and Basque Country is semi-independent now. I've always been attracted to Adam's argument about small states. Small states seem to do terribly well. Why shouldn't a small state like Wales do terribly well?
It could do well, and it might not. It would depend on the economic decisions that, in reality, we were able to make. And it's interesting that Adam talks about tying it to sterling or the euro, and that is certainly a tactic that is adopted elsewhere. And the Republic, or the Irish Free State and later Republic, for 58 years was the pound tied to sterling. So, but it does obviously limit your freedom to set monetary policy. I think what would happen is, for a generation, we would face economic disadvantage, even if just the frictional sense of the new structures, the new arrangements.
What's a generation history of the country? A generation is only a generation.
So, and we'd be out of the transfer union, and we would suffer a hit. After that, who knows? I mean, the Ireland had 50 years of economic disadvantage. Now, you could argue that would be compressed in the modern age. Those are perfectly respectable arguments, but I'm not sure you'll get people to agree to the 25 years of biblical pain or whatever you'd have to go through, and I think you'd have to be very candid about the disadvantages as well as the advantages. I mean, I was a Remainer, as was Adam, and we were very clear about what we thought would be the disadvantages. Well, they'd be writ large in the first phase of independence, and I don't think denying them is very, very proper. But could 3 million people run their own state? Well, of course they could.
Well, let's we're coming to the end of this, and I just listening to the three of you talk, I do feel you're kind of in the same ballpark, as they say in America. You seem to be wanting the same thing. You seem to have a view of Wales as a quite specific place, and that there ought to be a way forward that, in some sense, you can agree on, somewhere between federalism heavy and independence light. I don't know what you want to call it, but do you not feel that, I mean, if for the sake of the argument, Alan and Adam and David sat down and had this conversation at slightly greater length and greater detail, Wales could form what might be called a collective view, in the way in which Scotland sort of almost has, or it hasn't got there yet, it certainly hasn't got there now, but it in theory at least could form a collective view, which Ireland sort of did in the late 19th century. Wouldn't that be better than, in a sense, retreating into your tribe and discussing it from your tribal standpoint? Couldn't you get together, Alan?
Yes, I don't have an issue with a conversation between David and Adam. I think we've had those conversations a number of times already, and I don't want to deal in absolutes either. And I think, if you start in a constitutional conversation where you start with your red lines, you very rarely don't go much beyond that. And we've certainly learned that lesson in the last few years. For me, the importance is, you spoke about identity earlier, Simon. The culture that I would like to see deepened in Wales is one of a democratic culture. And I don't think we have got a democratic culture in Wales, as it happens, a shared democratic culture. And I want to see more of that. And for me, a parliament based in Cardiff, the capital, which exercises power on behalf of the people of Wales and shares that power with a United Kingdom Parliament, and I hope in the future a European Parliament again, is a future that I find very motivating, actually, where we empower communities, where we devolve power from Cardiff to different parts of the country, but that sovereignty of the people and not of the crown is where my interest lies. And if we can exercise that sovereignty in Wales on behalf of the people, to share that with people on the other side of the Severn and the Dee, in order to do the things that affect us together, I think is a very powerful, motivating thing, because, you know, we've lived together for hundreds of years, for centuries. Surely we can continue living together. What we can't carry on with is the dreadful sort of dictatorship that we have at present. But I hope we'll learn lessons from these last few years, not repeat the mistakes.
Adam, you're going to welcome Alan back into your party and form a joint party?
Of course, some trouble.
I come from an evangelical tradition, so we always rejoice when a sinner repents. You know, but, yeah, I think that maybe where there is shared ground between us is that we do assert the claim of right to echo, of course, Scotland's journey of the Welsh people to self-determination. That is an absolute right which resides here with the people of Wales. Currently, of course, even that is a reserved power. Yeah, the union of England and Wales is reserved at Westminster, the ultimate democratic outrage. I think that surely we should all agree that enshrining the principle that it's for the Welsh people to decide their future as a nation, whatever our views about the destination that we would prefer, it's the Welsh people that should decide the direction of travel. Yeah, and that is something maybe even all of us here would subscribe to.
Yeah, I agree.
David, you predicted the breakup of Great Britain by now. Would you like to predict when it's actually going to take place?
There was a question mark after the title of the book, and it was a warning rather than a prediction. I did read more common ground than is sometimes comfortably recognised or comfortable to recognise. I accept that, but I do think that there are fundamentals here as well. The future the archipelago will either be a confederation of independent states that will want certain institutions, shared decision making, and could well involve Ireland, as in the whole of Ireland or the Republic. Or it will be a United Kingdom that shares sovereignty and recognises the sovereignty over domestic issues of the home nations. Now, those models, are archetypes, and we have to have one or the other, it seems to me. There are some things, I do believe at one level sovereignty does exist. You can't just sort of wish it away and muddy it. And so on that, I'm fundamentally the passion and the sincerity of his argument, and the fact that Wales could, and Scotland could function as a state. I don't doubt that, but I think the price you pay would be a sad one. It would be the end of the United Kingdom and the benefits we have currently in that state.
Well, thank you very much. Thank all three of you very much. It was a very good discussion and some very positive feedback from the listeners. That brings this conversation to an end, if not the United Kingdom, at least this conversation. Do please thank St David's Festival of Ideas very much for this. Please go to the website and donate something. Everyone's giving their time and effort for nothing, so please do donate to the cause. And I think we all hope to see you in live form in glorious St David's next year. All the very best. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.